Welcome back to Andertons TV. Hopefully this will be a helpful video for you if you are new to this thing called reverb. Now, reverb is a naturally occurring phenomena in the world. If you go and stand in your bathroom or in a big building like a church or whatever, or a cave, and you clap your hands like that, that echoey effect that you hear is called reverb, and it might be very short and metallic sounding, or it might be big and cavernous and voluptuous. But guitar players love it because without it, your guitar sounds like this. Oh dear, that's dropped.
Yeah, but sometimes it works. But you know, everything is better with a bit of reverb on it. And actually, what it says on here as well. Now, you never ever say this, but it says please like and subscribe.
And then you change the setting, and
it says you can win something every 10,000 new subscriber, and you know, when we get to 1 million, you can win a clone.
There are many different types of reverb, and there are pedals to emulate all of them. And so we're just going to go through some of the basic types of reverb.
All prices?
Absolutely, yes. We're all prices.
Timestamps as well, if you want to.
So the first reverb that we're going to do is the one that you'll probably most associate with a built-in reverb to a guitar amplifier. And that's called a spring reverb. These were introduced into guitar amplifiers, I believe, around about the sort of 50s or 60s. And it's a mechanical device. It's a set of springs that sits in a tray, and the sound travels through it. And essentially those springs vibrate to create reverb. Many amps have that feature built in. Many amplifiers digitally recreate that sound. This pedal here is a digital recreation of a spring reverb.
And a very affordable one of that.
Absolutely, this is probably one of the more affordable pedals we've got. You, as Pete said, you can go cheap or you can go expensive with all types of guitar effects. The cheaper you go, typically the simpler the effect will be, and the lower the digital processing will be, so it may sound less real, you know. Anyway, so here is a spring reverb. I'll talk about what the three controls are in the middle, but listen for the clanginess of it. That's a real characteristic of a spring reverb, if that's what you want.
It is called a drip, actually.
Yeah,
so
the clanging noise is called the drip.
So I would associate this with surf. But it's a great sounding pedal, that.
We're going to use all of these pedals through this guitar amplifier's effects loop. The effects loop is a way of sort of interrupting or putting adding a chain into an amplifier in between the preamp stage of the amp and the power amp stage. There are lots of pedals where you wouldn't use that. You just plug into the pedal and into the front of the amplifier. Reverb is one of those pedals where it's kind of up to you. You can do either. Using the effects loop does make it easier to use a sort of a gainier sound in the amplifier. But again, it's up to you. So look, let's look at these three controls: dwell, mix, and tone.
Let's not dwell on that too long.
Mix and tone are pretty universally used language. So mix is the balance between the dry and the affected signal. So no mix and you'll get a dry sound. A little bit of mix, a little bit of reverb.
Good band, little mix.
And then, you know, until you've got tone.
I mean, that's almost, my clean signal is almost not there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would set this to taste, and the more you turn the mix up, the more kind of crazy and atmospheric it gets. Tone is not the tone of the dry signal, the guitar signal, it's the tone of the reverb. So we're going to get like a bright reverb or a dark reverb. And you set that to taste as well. Now, dwell is the name that you might see changing on different pedals. Sometimes they'll call it decay time, or they'll just call it reverb. But it's the amount, the length, if you like, of how much that reverb decays for. So we can have a little bit, or we can have a lot.
A lot of it. That's a lot in that pedal.
So that is your spring reverb. And again, if the idea is, as Pete said, some of those classic old Fender amplifiers that would have used for surf music.
Hank Marvin, stuff
and
like
again,
that.
back in the day, those spring reverb tanks would have been separate units that guitar players would have taken along and attached to their regular amp. But that's a spring reverb effect.
Yeah.
Before we leave the whole spring thing, this pedal is amazing because it actually is real springs in a pedal. So hopefully when this lights up, the camera will get a good shot.
Yeah,
in a reverb tray and an amplifier, that tray will be longer with longer springs, but essentially the idea is the same. And again, one of the reasons that, one of the I suppose disadvantages of real springs is because it's an acoustic thing. If you happen to knock your amp or your pedal while you're using it and it's got real springs,
but that's also an effect. People use that as effects.
They
and,
do.
You know, it does keep going a bit there, doesn't it? But there you are.
So
it's
just a very,
notch.
very quick play on this. This is again a spring reverb again, but an expensive one.
So good. It's a wonderful Gretsch as well, by the way.
It's a very iconic guitar sounding reverb. Let's move on. Next pedal is a Boss reverb pedal. Absolutely, Pete's just said classic. It's Boss make all kinds of pedals. This actually is a reverb pedal RV6 with multiple types of reverb in it. So one of the emulations is indeed a spring emulation. But we're going to use this to demonstrate a hall reverb.
Yeah.
That is literally doing what it says on the tin, standing in a hall and digitally recreating that. So you should, on a good hall reverb, hear less of that clang that you hear on a spring reverb, and just more of a sense that you're in an open space. Boss use effect level, tone, and time. So same kind of idea. Effect level is our mix, tone is the tone of the reverb, and time is the length of the reverb decay. Right? So let's have a little listen. Let's have a bit more, shall we? There, it's quite a small.
Yeah, it's definitely a digital vibe to it.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's fine.
But Boss will be a good example of a mid-price, not the best, not the worst of a digital reverb. And that sense of, well, I think the human ear just hears this as it's a slightly artificial sounding reverb, all right? But that is just what digital is, because it's trying to digitally recreate reverb. We're going to come on to something called a convolution reverb at the end of this, which is some relatively new technology where almost like real reverbs are used in
which is very interesting, in
pedals. But this is a digital one. So,
but it sounds good.
A little bit more of a play.
This is nice. Sounds nice.
Yeah, and honestly, you'd probably dial that down a bit. You know, you could use it with some overdrive. That's an interesting one with reverb. Depending again whereabouts you have it in your chain, you can often have just the right amount of reverb for a clean sound, and then punch in an overdrive sound in front of it and find that you've actually then got too much reverb. So
especially if you're running straight into your front of your amp, reverb, delay stuff straight in the amp, and then you run an overdrive pedal into that, into the amp. It doesn't translate the same way. And
here's a tip: if you're recording your guitar, don't forget you can always add a bit more reverb in post, but you can never take away, and I'm guilty of that. I love reverb, so I'll often record with lots of reverb on, and then I listen to it back and go, oh, I've got a bit too much there, haven't I? And there's nothing you can do if that's how you've recorded it.
Same with gain.
Exactly. You can always add, but you can't take away. Do you know, a chef told me that once, that it was a friend of mine who was a chef. He was talking about putting like, you know, herbs and spice and stuff. You can always add, but you can't take away. Anyway, shall we move on?
Yes.
The next kind of reverb, again, it's another mechanical reverb. It's called a plate reverb. So again, this was designed way back in the 50s or 60s by recording studios, again, to add reverb to recording sessions. It's essentially, it is metal plates that the sound kind of goes through, and they can be massive or relatively small. Yeah. We'll put a picture of a plate reverb on screen now. It's one of my favourites, particularly with guitars. It does have a more shimmery sound, I think, than a whole style reverb.
It's a bit more metallic, depending on the size.
We're using a Universal Audio golden reverberator. It's one of the more expensive pedals. Yeah. Again, has different kinds of reverbs in here we can choose from. So we're using the Plate 140, which is an EMT, sort of a reproduction of an EMT plate reverb.
Lovely.
Have a little listen. Great. Now, we do now have a new control on here that we haven't seen before. So decay is our length of reverb. Mix is the mix. We said we've got some, instead of tone, we've got bass and treble. We've got modulation now. So this is about adding a sort of a modulated, sort of almost chorusy tone to the reverb. But we have pre-delay now. So this is a sense of controlling how fast does the actual reverb occur relative to Pete hitting the notes, if you like, into it. And this is quite a natural sort of phenomenon as well. Your different rooms will have different sense of like how fast do you get that initial reflection.
When it comes back,
so we can control that. I'm not a massive fan as a guitar player of having an excessive amount of pre-delay before the reverb comes in, but
sometimes it's good, especially if you do chords and you want to hear the chord come in first. So if you go with that, and then you want the reverb to sort of.
So let's demonstrate how that works. Here's our. Definitely hear that more metallic-y. It's almost a cross between a hole and a spring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the modulation, you can tell it's just on there.
I'll take the modulation away, and then you'll be able to hear as you know what it sounds like. And if I add the modulation in, you just get a sense of movement in the reverb.
Yeah.
It's great,
beautiful.
Man. And then I'll show you this pre-delay thing. It probably works best if you just do a stab. So you've got that whereas if the pre-delay off, the reverb should be instantaneous.
It's better if I do like this. Can you turn it up?
Yeah. Imagine again, you're just literally, you're waiting for the sound to reflect back off of the surface that's going to create the reverb, so you can essentially control the speed of that. So that's a plate reverb.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It is. I still think it's my favourite kind of reverb for adding to guitar, but that's a personal preference. You might disagree. We're into perhaps a slightly less well-used reverb now. This is called a shimmer effect. This is where you take a reverb and you apply an octave to the reverb. So it's going to artificially create another layer of reverb at an octave higher pitch than the natural reverb is. It gives a very angelic kind of sounding atmospheric tone. This particular JHS one actually allows you to decide whether you want that octave pitch to be above or below. But here is the
Angels and
setting,
Demons.
which is the traditional shimmer effect.
That's nice.
I love that.
I mean, there is also difference between shimmers. You know, a more affordable shimmer, you pay more money, you get a better shimmer.
These are like £99 though,
exactly.
Aren't they?
So it's a good price for that.
I think, let me just see as well, if I turn the octave all the way off, does it work as a normal reverb? Yeah. So it's like a whole reverb with an octave above
Give
shimmer.
it full whack on it, see what happens.
Nice. I really like that.
Yeah.
If I've got to piece of advice with this, I think you can overdo it with this. I had a cloudburst for a while, which is a similar kind of vibe thing, and then your next thing you know is absolutely everything you're playing has got the shimmer effect on it, and it gets a bit monotonous, doesn't it?
It does. To listen to as well.
A bit like me. I'll put it in the down position, so now you're hearing the same thing, but where you've got this deep, low reverb.
Almost like a church organ.
Yes.
Nice. This guitar is wonderful,
It's wicked.
man.
Links below for what this guitar is. It is one of the more expensive Gretsch professional guitars.
You say it's expensive, but it's not, relatively.
What is it going to be, 2,000 or 3,000 quid, something like that?
Yeah, but it's compared to what you get for the money. It's got some really nice pickups in it.
So look, we're calling this JHS call this the Octave Reverb. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as a shimmer. But that's the idea. So let's move on. This pedal came out at the beginning of 2023, and I think we sold 1,000 of these or something like that. So we're going to take this idea of the shimmer, but we're going to apply different intervals to it. They call it an ensemble, so this is more like now a chord happens in the reverb.
It's incredible.
We've got, again, same sort of controls: decay, mix, modulation, tone, and pre-delay. And the ensemble switch on the cloudburst can either be switched off, and then it's just a normal reverb pedal, or it has two, a medium and a forte setting. Should we just go forte? Should we go max it out? Maximum effect. Here we go.
I mean, in stereo as well. When you get this into stereo, it's such a wonderful experience. It's an out. You can play with this.
Who doesn't want to write a song where there's an intro with tons and tons of that all over it? So that's the cloudburst. I'm not sure that there are many other brands that are doing this kind of tech, and I'm not sure what the jargon they would use for it, but it's some sort of pitch shifted reverb. But as I say, Strymon call it ensemble, and that's we're trying it in that medium setting. This for me is, again, why reverb is such an inspiring effect.
Absolutely.
I think you could tell as we've moved through this demo towards the shimmer and then the cloudburst, all of a sudden it becomes more immersive and it draws out of you as a player more musicality. Anyway.
Yeah, I could play with it all day long.
All day.
Yeah, so let's just move on.
Let's move on. Okay, this is a pedal called the Polyverbs, a really small Australian company, but this is what's called a Convolution Reverb.
This is wonderful.
If you're familiar with impulse responses, which is where you're sort of capturing the real impulse of a speaker moving, and for a few years now, particularly recording guitar players have been used to applying an impulse response to a digital modeler or something like that. It's almost a sample of a real space, isn't it? Anyway, so a convolution reverb is that.
Yeah.
And the poly reverb is packed full of about 50 different real reverb. Yeah. So someone has been around, found interesting spaces, captured the impulse response of that space, and then put it in a pedal.
I'll tell you, because I did it. So how I did it was I went into a silo. I found a silo down in Somerset, went into it, put my phone up. I mean, you can either have it mono, or you can have a stereo microphone, and then you start recording it, and then you clap like that, and you let it die out, and let that reverb die out. So and then you take that back into Logic or whatever, and you cut it off, and then you can apply that into this application. So you can make your own ones, which makes it such a wonderful thing, right?
Interestingly, the quality of convolution reverbs is similar to that of impulse response players. Yeah. So the longer that the impulse response can last, the better normally quality that you're getting from the reverb. And I think on this it's up to something like 18 seconds, so it's a big...
18 seconds?
Yeah, it's a really powerful... Anyway, look, ignore the fact that there are no knobs on this. Loki, who runs Poly, loves to make things a bit different. So actually on this, we've now got, you know, touchscreen slidey thing on here. But I'm just going to literally take you through, I don't know, just some of the presets, and you have a listen.
Stunning.
It's, do you know, we need to probably let that decay a bit more, don't we?
Yeah.
I probably should have mentioned a lot of these pedals will have done an in-depth video of on their own, and you'll have to go and find the links in this. This one came out at the end of 2023 and won our product of the year for 2023.
And went straight on your board. Carbon X. It's so, everything goes silent. So everybody's like,
Interestingly, on the it's not just spaces that he's captured. He has actually gone and captured mechanical, so like a real plate.
Yeah.
He's even done weird stuff like taking impulse responses, like whilst it's raining. All that, just to get some. And you can, if you're really into it, you can go and start recording your own impulse responses of spaces. And I think this will store up to 10 of your own ones as well. So look, that's the Polyverbs. Lots of fun. Our final one is the Strymon Big Sky MX, probably currently the king of reverbs.
Yeah, the one that everybody thinks it's so pricey. It is expensive.
It is really expensive, this one. It's the dearest one. But if you, or is it? Because of course, if you just want all of these, but in here, that's it. So this will do, you can see around this control here, you've got all of your rooms, halls, chambers, plates, springs, shimmers. The whole 9 yards. It has convolution reverb engines in it as well.
And you can add that into it.
It's full MIDI. It's got, you know, presets. It's got more knobs and buttons on it. Freeze functions more. You know, it's like,
and it sounds incredible.
That's the daddy. Again, there's a full video of us messing with this in the links below. So actually, to be honest with you, this isn't. Oh, but what this can do that these can't is this can do 2 reverb engines simultaneously. So and you can pick any 2 of the engines that are within here and run one into the other. So then you're into this real mad ambient world of reverb into reverb.
Can you run them and stereo out one to one, one to the other?
If you want, or you can stack them or run them in parallel or whatever you want to do. So we're going to find one of those just because, and that'll be the end of this little you know, lesson of what different reverbs sound like. Hopefully useful. I don't know.
There is a blog for this as well, isn't there? So there will be a blog you can go and find on our website.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us, and I'll go find a patch peak and play us out. We'll see you in another video soon.